So you want to hunt turkeys in Nebraska? Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be host today on Archery Talk 101. And with us, we have a turkey hunter that has just completed a hunt like that. Welcome to the show, Harlin.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Roy.
So before we get started in your turkey hunt, because I want to hear about that, why and how did you get started in archery?
You know, my dad, he was a bow hunter when I was growing up, maybe not quite as hardcore as I am, but he always took the opportunity to get me out in the field with him. Ever since I was probably 4 or 5 years old, I would tag along with him. And it was just, I mean, we did all kinds of hunting. I mean, shotgun, rifle, and all that. But bow hunting it is my true love now for sure. But even back then, that's what really sparked my interest most in hunting was when I got to go along on those trips. Just, it added a lot more of a challenge, and it just, I kind of fed into it. And by the time I was 13, 14, then I started getting a lot more active in it. But my dad's actually for sure the one who got me started.
Yeah, that's kind of a common thing, that the kids will, pick it up because their parents are doing it. And then every once we get some, it's like parents had nothing to do with hunting and took it up on themselves. And it's all just, everybody's got a different story. And I like listening to them. They're a lot of fun to listen to them, how everybody got started.
Yeah, for sure. I was pretty lucky because he, did it a lot and made sure he always got me involved.
That's always nice when you can spend some time like that. So after you started, what was kind of your journey like that leads you up to where you're at now?
When I first started, like I said, I was probably about 14, 15 back then. That's how old you had to be to legally hunt deer in Nebraska. And me and one of my good buddies in school, we got started about the same time. So we went out and educated a lot of animals and didn't do a lot of killing, but we had fun trying. And so we did, we progressed with our skills as far as shooting and that, and learned a lot in the field. And a year or two later, we started having a little success. We each harvested a buck, and then from there, that really sparked the fire. And now I've hunted in 8 or 9 states and also in Ontario, and hunted a lot of different types of animals and that. And like I said, archery is one of those things with bow hunting that is my true passion. It's one of those things that really drives me. So, but I started out with a friend, and now I have connections all over the world, basically.
Yeah, that's one thing that this sport is all over the world. And I don't think you can find a country that doesn't have some kind of archery. It may not be much, but they have them. I know I've talked to people in all over the world, and it's kind of all the same. It's a little different rules sometimes, but it's a lot of fun. So do you mostly hunt, or do you do target or anything else as well? Or
I do a ton of hunting. I'm a 12-month. I mean, I'm either bow fishing or hunting something every month of the year. And but I shoot several 3D shoots during the summer. Try to make the last couple years, try to go up to Terry Peak to a TAC event. And then I'm currently the chairman of the Nebraska Bowhunters Association. And I've been the range master for our annual jamboree at Halsey for the last 7, 8 years. And so I always go up there for a week of that, set up all the ranges. And so I like every aspect of the sport.
yeah, you'll have to make sure you give me the contact information so we can let everybody know if they want to attend, what they can do to attend. And I'll put it in the description, and we'll also post it onto the Archery Talk 101 Facebook page.
Absolutely.
We use it for, finding events that you can find it there. We don't advertise in there for products. So we can allow links to events, and, we can get more people out to it that may not know it's even there.
That's exactly right. And it's amazing when we get new people that come out to these events. They're like, man, I can't believe we've missed out on this long, And so the more we can get word out there, And just like this is a great avenue for us to get that exposure. So it's a great family event, and unlimited amount of shooting and that. So it's, it's always great to get new people involved.
So what all do you do at those events?
Like at that, it's basically, it's a 4-day event, but I would say 50, 60 of us the last several years have made it a week-long deal to where we get there and get targets set up. But that we have 4 ranges set up, and that's unlimited shooting from sun up to sundown. And you can keep score or not. We don't have any of, as far as the 3D, we don't have, that's not like a scoring event, but we always have some friendly contest and that. And then
Yeah,
there's also some novelty shoots. There's like a balloon shoot to where you have partners on a time shoot. There's a distance shoot. There's one to where you shoot at like 90 yards at a buffalo, the white buffalo. And then there's just a lot for little kids. We have, we have several things for them. So there's different people step up each year to do some workshops with the kids, whether they're making something, or I know one year they made turkey calls, and so there's a lot of different things. And then there's the river right there where kids can go tubing and that. So a lot of things for a family to do. So that's one thing we take pride in, that it is a family event. And it's great to see more and more kids, all the way clear down 3, 4, 5 years old showing up each year. So
yeah. And for our listeners, how would they get a hold of you?
I would say the best way is they can go to our website, Nebraska Bowhunters and Association, or they can get on our Facebook page, and there's all the contact informations, and it has information concerning. We have 2 main events, and that is the Jamboree, which occurs the first week of August, and then we also have our banquet at Kearney the first weekend in March every year. So but all that's on there. It's like $25 a year for a family membership, so it's cheap. And you get a
Yeah,
newsletter every couple months with that, and yeah, just a lot of good things. And the Nebraska Bowhunters is active and working through things as far as legislation that affects bow hunting in our state. And so they do have a good voice there, and just a lot of great things that our organization offers.
yeah. And while you was talking, I brought up your website, and the listeners won't be able to see it, but I can share my screen for those that get to watch it. And this is what your website looks like. So if you want to contact anybody, you can sign up, and there's all kinds of stuff here for you. Kind of scroll down here, a lot of good information. So I hope this is the right site.
That's it. That's it.
This
You're
looks
right
like it.
there.
So,
Yep.
here's some contact information right over here on nebraskabowhunters.com is the website. So those that want to go out, and that's one nice thing about recording this on a Zoom call is, the group gets to see it right away. And if you watch it on my YouTube channel, you get to see the video. Otherwise, on Spotify and a couple other places, it comes out just as an audio. So that's a good place to get a hold of you. And you have a Gmail account too, nebraskabowhunters@gmail.com. So there's a lot of ways to get a hold of you, and I'll leave those links in the description so that if they want to get a hold of you. And
Yeah, we appreciate that. So I think people would really enjoy it.
so I know you just got through with a turkey hunt. That was in Nebraska, I'm assuming, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep. Actually, I had a friend from Colorado that came out opening weekend, and then another buddy from over at North Platte came up, and we had a great opening weekend hunt. My friend from Colorado filled both his tags with nice toms, and then I shot one, and then my other buddy got one. So we had a great opening weekend, and so I still had one tag. And my birthday was a couple days ago, and I had a little bit of time after work and located some birds, and I knew it was either going to happen quick or it wasn't going to. And I saw a couple nice toms with about a half dozen hens, and got circled around. They were working up a little creek, and got set up on a ledge, and the hens came right into the decoys and tore into my hen decoy. And then they went by me, and Tom stood out there and strutted at about 40 yards. And finally he headed my way. And when he got about 15 yards, I don't think he seemed to not, he liked the decoys, but when he stepped around the corner, I think I had my bigger window open on my blind, and I don't think he liked that too much. And he came out of strut and started to turn to walk away, but he was within 15 yards at that point. Made a perfect shot. He made it 5 yards and tipped over. So that ended my season in Nebraska. But actually, I know our numbers have dropped, but we still found some nice flocks. And I would say that as far as numbers, our jakes, I saw more jakes this year than I've seen probably the last 5 years. So that's a good sign for us here. We did have a
Yeah.
pretty good hatch. So if we could get another 2 or 3 of those going in a row, maybe numbers will start bouncing back.
Yeah, that'd be good. Now, whereabouts in Nebraska were you?
I was over here on the Niobrara River, north of Ainsworth. So
Oh, okay.
yep. So we have I have 160 acres and a cabin over there just off the river. So spend a lot of time over there. So
Yeah, it sounds like nice. You got a cabin on the river. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a pretty much all year round place to go.
it is. Well, if you ask my wife, she'll say I spend a little too much time there, probably.
Yeah, well, take her along with you, then she can't complain, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Does anybody else in your family hunt or shoot a
Oh yeah.
bow?
I have 2 children. My daughter Maddie, she's 20 years old, and then I have a son Zach, who's 26. And when you talk about bow hunting, I didn't know if anybody could be any more passionate about it, but my son is like over the top, so much so that when he's a physical therapist, and the first thing he did when he graduated was apply for a job in Alaska. So he's living in Palmer, Alaska, and that is strictly for bow hunting. So
Oh,
uh, that's the only reason he went there. He went on a caribou hunt, and he come back from that, and he said, if I could live anywhere, it'd be in Palmer, Nebraska, or Palmer, Alaska. And before he'd even passed his boards, he applied for a job up there, and they interviewed him and offered them the job. And the week or 2 after he graduated, he was on his way to Alaska. So he will be a resident the end of May. So he's getting fired up for a brown bear this spring. So,
oh yeah.
but he got to do a Kodiak blacktail hunt, shot a nice buck, and had a couple friends from Nebraska join him, and they all shot bucks with their bows. And so they had a great adventure, and he killed a black bear and got to sit in the stand and watch his buddy kill a brown bear last spring. So short time he's been there, he's already had some great times. But no, he's a very successful bow hunter as well, and my daughter is too. I mean, she's killed probably close to 15 bucks and a couple Pope and Youngs and a bunch of turkeys, and also enjoys the bow fishing thing. She does that a lot with me in the summer. So she surprises her professors in college because she, looks like the cheerleader type, but it's like when they find out all the stuff she's done with the bow, they're always shocked. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing when everybody thinks one thing and then you prove them completely wrong. And that's the ladies have kind of an advantage there because they can make everybody think that they're just nothing, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, this person has a little more skills than what letting on. And yeah, that's kind of almost a fun way to do it sometimes. Is you don't really let everybody know what skills you have until you need to use them, and then it's like, oh, more than what you're letting on.
that's
I did
right.
that at one job I was on. It's like I basically just played like I didn't know what was going on until I got in with one that was doing stuff overnight, and it's like, more than what you're letting on. I was like, yeah, I should do what you're doing.
Yeah, that's
But that's not
right.
my job. It's something else. And that's
Yeah,
nice in Archery too, when you get, you don't really know who has what skills, and don't assume. And and it's a lot of fun because you don't have to be a big, strong person to shoot a bow and shoot it well.
That's exactly right. It's like, but I was very lucky. My kids started hunting at a very young age, and they both had shot their first deer at the age of 10, and had both shot turkeys well before that with their bows. So spent a lot of time in the field together, and those are some great memories and great times that I'll never forget. So
Yeah, that's always nice when you get a chance to take your kids out hunting with you.
that's for sure. Some of my fondest memories of the sport. So
Yeah, and that's really what counts is getting those memories with them. Going doing stuff with them is a lot of fun. And then as you get older, it's like it's a little harder to keep those new memories coming because everybody gets their own life and
that's right. But I've been lucky that we've, been able to make the memories we've had. My son, geez, we've been all over doing a lot of things. He drew the uh super tag, what was it, 4 years ago for the Nebraska super tag, and he filled all of it. He killed his elk, he killed his deer, his antelope, and his two turkeys, all in that tag was good for 2 years. And he filled them all with his bow the first year. So he was the
oh,
only one that was ever to achieve that so far on a Nebraska super tag. So um
that's
so
that's a lot.
it was, and I was right by his side when he killed his elk and his antelope on that, and got experience, tracking his deer and all that too. So we've made tons of memories.
Well, and there's not that many elk here in Nebraska, so you have kind of a limited place you can even go hunt, and then you
That's
get the
right.
tag and get to find an owner that'll let you hunt.
That's right. And he hunted south of North Platte, and he contacted several landowners. He took it upon himself. He was actually in college, and we got a call that he had drew the super tag. And when my wife called and told me, I thought she was joking. And of course, when I called him, he thought I was joking. And when he finally found out I was serious, he was about crying. So he
Yeah.
he contacted landowners and was in nailed down a couple spots, and we had some friends that helped us out tremendously and getting some permission, and he killed a a big 6 point with, it was second day of the season. So, and then I drew a Nebraska elk tag 2 years ago, and I hunted North Ainsworth here, like 6 miles on cornfield bulls. And after a month and a half of scouting, I hadn't found much, and my season lasted 2 minutes. We found a bull, and first 2 minutes of the first day, my buddy called him into 10 yards, and so I killed a good bull too. So we've been fortunate on that. So
Yeah, when you don't get that many chances, you almost have to take the first one that's legal to shoot, and because if you pass on it, that may be your only shot.
that's right. And I had scouted hard. My one buddy, we saw 4 bulls that morning, and they went into the corn, and we were waiting for legal shooting light. And finally, we were at that time, and I was like, you better drop back and bugle. And so those were 4 raghorns, and he called and they bugled, and then a different bull bugled and stepped out, and it was the herd bull. And it just by luck, that was the one that came into 10 yards. And it's what I told him. It's lucky it was him instead of one of them raghorns, because they'd have got the same treatment. So
Yeah. Whichever one presented the shot first, right?
that's right. Yes.
But that was good when the big one come in and
Yep. It was a
got that
good
good
bull.
shot.
So, yep. So he didn't went about 25 yards and died right beside a old 2-track road. And the rancher came down there with his tractor and loaded him whole right in the back of my pickup.
Oh, that was really good.
Yeah. So I had to rub it into my buddy out in Montana. We'd hunted out there the year before, and we had to pack like 7.5 miles on one bull. And I said, this is a lot better this way. So
Yeah. I know I had one. I was hunting with a buddy of mine, and it was actually out of Two Rivers, but you probably know where that's at. But
mhm.
my listeners probably don't know, but it's a public place, and we was hunting, and was back in there, and he shot and it run out to 5 feet from the dump station. So there's a black asphalt. Just drive up and load it in. It's
Yeah.
right there next to it. And you can't ask for, better tracking than that.
That's exactly right.
But, like you, I probably had a lot of them. You had to drag a long ways, and
Yep.
they get to be a challenge, and that's what's nice about the deer carts now.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, didn't have such a thing when I started.
No, had to hump them out of there. So
Yeah, you just kind of grab an antler or a leg or something and pull it, and you
yeah,
take a rope and tie it around his neck and pull it that way, and just something to help pull it. And late
yeah,
season, if you grab the antler, you might have an antler in your hand,
that's exactly right.
so you can't always depend on them being attached real well. Now, I know you've had a lot of memorable hunts, but what is your most memorable hunt? Tell us about that one.
Um, it's hard to narrow it down, but it would probably be, well, I got three of them that I haven't narrowed down to. One is when my son took his bull elk and I was there with him and bugled it in, and he made the shot. I mean, that was an emotional time and something I'll never forget. And then I would also say one time I was sitting with my daughter and she shot a big 7x5 whitetail. And after she shot, she just broke down crying, which made me cry. And it's like that was something. And then I did an Alaska caribou hunt with a couple buddies, and we flew in and into the Charlie River, and we were set up where they flew us into, and it looked like more like sheep country. In fact, we did have Dall sheep right above us, and I'm like, this was like thick trees. I had never seen a video of a caribou hunt ever take place in such a thing. And he promised there'd be caribou headed our way, and he was right, because in the first 2 days we filled out with our bows, and those 10 days that we spent back in that camp were probably some of the most memorable I ever made as far as bow hunting. So, but I'm planning on going on a brown bear hunt with my son up there now, so I got a lot more great memories to come. So
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Listen to your story about your bear hunt with your son. That would be a cool story to listen to. Maybe we'll have to
yes.
have you back on after you go.
Yes, there you go. After that, hopefully I have
Yeah.
a successful story to tell. But no, when it comes to bow hunting, it's like I said, I'm a year-round guy, and they always say, "What's your favorite hunt?" It's been said by others, it's my next one. So is my favorite. So that, that's kind of how I go. It's like it depends on the season what my favorite is. And I got bow fishing coming up for big heads now that I've filled my turkey tags, and I love to spend time on the Missouri River. It's one of my favorite things is bow fishing for big heads, and a great way to fill your freezer with some good meat too. So I already have a couple big trips of that planned out here coming up in May. So
You're going to go on the Missouri River. That's where you're going to go for those.
yep, we go down below Yankton at Gavin's Point. We fish probably a 25-30 mile stretch, and spend a lot of time up there. So we've got it down pretty well as far as getting them clean boneless. And like I said, there's days on the river we can almost fill a whole cooler full of some of the best eating fish you'll ever have. And when I first heard that, I was skeptical as anybody when I heard that a big head carp was good eating. But let me tell you, it is unbelievable. It's way different than our common carp. They're a plankton eater, pure white meat. They do have the bone structure of a carp, so it takes little to learn how to get them clean boneless, but we've got a method that's worked out, and we've taught a lot of different people how to do it. And because going up there and shooting them, it's well worth taking the time to utilize it. So I put on a ton of fish fries, because it's like we can come home from a trip with 75, 80 pounds of meat. So I like to try to share it and spread the word.
Yeah, believe it, don't think the carp's actually very good. And I've had some, just the regular grass carps you have around here,
Yeah.
and throw them on a smoker and it was amazing. It's like almost tastes like ham.
Right.
Depending on
Yep.
what you're using it to smoke with, don't use the hickory,
Right.
you use it an apple or something like that, and or
Yep.
peach, and it was, I was amazed how good it was.
Yeah. And if
You
you
couldn't
tried
tell it was
these big
fish.
heads, this big head's like similar to kind of like a halibut texture, and it's pure white. You can grill it, you can fry it. It's very versatile and about as mild. My wife's not a big fish eater, but she loves to eat it. So um we it's great to be able to utilize it.
Yeah, that's something that people just don't realize. It's how you cook it. Like when I first started eating venison, the deer is, if it's not fixed right, that fat, as you got to get rid of the fat on a deer. No fat.
Yep.
You want it completely gone. And not knowing how to fix it. The first time we got a deer, it lasted us a whole year.
Yep.
Well, then it got where my freezer was full. I had moose in there, and the freezer was full of deer. And you got another one, and it's like, what am I going to do? So I made jerky out of the whole thing. It
Yep.
was within 2 or 3 weeks, the whole deer was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, my kids kind of, it's like, well, is it ready yet? Is it ready yet?
Yep.
Didn't know if it was ready yet or not.
No, growing up, I know my dad, they used to cook deer and they would cook it so well done that it was like it wasn't the best eating. And then once I learned what to, tried all the different recipes and learned how to cook it. And now we go through a ton of venison. I mean, between me and my kids, we usually will have 5, 6 deer and maybe an elk, maybe a caribou, maybe some black bear. And it's like, I'm, I'm almost out of deer already. Like you say, I made a bunch of jerky, then we made a bunch of salami and different brats, and we do it all ourselves. And then we eat a ton of deer steak. My son basically eats it every meal. I mean, at night he has a salad, a potato, and a deer steak. So we go through a ton of it. So
Yeah,
I think it's our biggest responsibility as hunters, though, is to utilize what we hunt. I mean, that's the biggest way to respect the game that we pursue is to utilize everything.
yeah. The two top cuts, between the loins and the back straps, those are really good. But the back leg has some really good roasts in it, and steaks, you want to do that. And the front legs, there's not as much on there, but they're still good meat. And if it's not big enough for a steak or something, you know what? That's where we get our ground from.
That's exactly right. You can utilize all of it. The last few years, I've started corning some of those big back hams and having corned venison. And I have a big get together every spring and make Reubens out of it. And some of my buddies are like, those are the best Reubens I've ever had, is that corned deer. So
Oh yeah, I've never heard anybody doing that. What do you do when you're doing that? How you do that?
I actually got on the internet and there's a recipe by Hank. If you just look up Hank Shaw corned venison and use that recipe, it's a brine, and you put it in there for like 9 or 10 days and brine it, and it's just like a corned beef, only it's deer. And then I usually just stick it in the crock pot on low for 8, 9 hours, and it tastes just like corned beef, only it's a little more lean.
Yeah, because there's no fat
Yeah.
in deer when you have, because that fat terrible. And
Well,
I
just
know.
like you say, I trim all the fat, make sure there's not anything on it. So, but it's delicious that way. So, and a good way to use some of them big roasts. So,
Oh yeah. Well, I know that I can tell the difference. When you go to one of the packing plants where they process the deer for you, and which I don't do that very often because I don't like the results what I get back. The ground you take, when you're cooking the ground, making a hamburger or something out of the ground, and then you take the stuff that I process, or like you process, all the fat's gone, pull the membrane off, you grind it all up. The difference in the smell and taste are completely not even the same. You
yeah,
don't like the way the butcher's ground smells when you're cooking it, because they don't trim all the fat off. They'll stick it in there and grind it. They don't care. Um,
yeah,
that's why we process it ourselves, and I've been doing that for you know uh, a few decades.
yeah. I do all my own. In fact, there's usually about half a dozen of us get together, and we'll spend a whole day making stuff. And not only that, it's just an enjoyable time, the camaraderie and all that. So
Well, and you know how the meat was cared for too, and you know it's your deer.
that's
You know,
exactly right.
not like going to the butcher. They say, a lot of them say you get your own meat back, but yeah, I don't believe that all the time.
Yeah, there's some that I think do, but a lot of times you're right. I don't think that's probably possible for them. And but I enjoy that, but I enjoy that as much as some of the hunts is to get together and take care of it. It's satisfying.
Well, then you can cut the meat up in however you and your family use it. You know, if you do a lot of roast, then use the back leg for roast. If you don't really do much in roast, more steaks, use it for steaks. Um, Probably some of the best meat I've had is a moose when I got one out in Canada, got a moose. And that was amazing meat.
Yeah, that moose is tough to beat.
Yeah, you get so much of it too.
Yeah. Yep. I haven't been lucky enough to shoot one of those yet, but everybody says it's overwhelming when you walk up on your first moose to get broke down.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I went up, I want to do archery, but the guy I was going with, he went up during rifle season. So I took rifle up and did that. But when you get up there and you have this moose, you get this like great big old thing, and the ears, you put your foot next to the ears and it's the same size.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've got all this, the head, and I got a cow, and I went ahead and brought the head back. I actually had it mounted and sent at my son's house because I didn't have high ceilings here. But the head and hide by itself weighed 131 pounds.
Right.
That's no meat or nothing.
Amazing.
That is
Yeah.
just that.
Yeah.
And then you're cutting it all up, and I put it in the coolers, brought it home, and then I spent about a week, pulling them out of the cooler, cutting them up, and how I was going to use them. And it was a lot of fun. But you know what? That meat lasts a long time in a deep freeze.
Yeah, it does. So, well, with my son living up there in Alaska now, I certainly hope I get the opportunity to take a moose while he's there. So,
Yeah, that would be good. So who knows? He may live there until he retires.
he might, when he first went, he was talking 3 to 5 years, but his sister informed me that he's never coming back last week. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's alive. He might be a lifer up there.
Yeah, it might be. As long as you can take the winners, why not?
He got right. He got through that pretty good shape. He's, so he like I said, he's looking forward to the bear hunting and that. So then he'll roll right into everything else. I think he's got a mountain goat hunt planned, and blacktails and bears and caribou. So he's got a lot on his plate.
Yeah. Well, he works so that he can go hunt.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. So
The only thing to be different is working was hunting.
that's right.
That's
Sometimes I'm
step.
starting to think that's what he does mostly is hunt and work part-time. So
Yeah. Well, if you get by with it, why not, right?
yes.
So what is your next hunt you have planned out?
Um, I hope to get my daughter out probably on a turkey hunt here before the end of the season. But then I'm gonna be doing a ton of bow fishing in May and June. I'm lined up to take a few people. I didn't draw a paddlefish tag this year. I did last year. So I'm gonna take some buddies archery paddlefish in June, and then we'll be hunting big heads May and June. And then July, I'm going up to see my son, and I don't have a hunt planned. I'm just gonna go up and do some fishing, and wife's gonna go with me, and we're gonna make a little vacation out of it. And this fall, then I'll probably just be Nebraska this year. Antelope, mule deer, whitetail. And I don't know, I'm throwing around maybe going back to South Dakota and doing a boat hunt up there. We did that here 3 years ago and had a great time. And so we may do that again. So if we can draw a tag, so.
That's quite a few hunts coming up.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a year-round hunter when it comes to bow hunting, and it's like there's not really one month that goes by that I'm not hunting something with my bow. I have a friend, come uh December, January, we do an annual bunny hunt, and we just had our 25th year. We call it the Bunny Blunters Invite. We just had our 25th year this year, and I think we had 49 hunters. So um
Oh,
it started with 5 of us, and it's built that. So we make a 3-day event out of it, and just have a great time doing it. So um, that, like I said, I'm usually, when I get done with one hunt, I'm looking at what I'm going to do for my next. So, but I tell you what, we're lucky here in Nebraska with the opportunities we have, because I can drive 5 to 10 miles one direction, be hunting mule deer and antelope, and I can drive outside city limits and be hunting whitetails or turkeys. So a lot of opportunities here close. I think that is one thing that my son does miss out on, even in Alaska, um, not having those opportunities where you can just step out your door and be hunting in 5 minutes.
yeah, that's for me to go out, for mule deer, it's a little bit of a drive. I'm over here on the east end of Nebraska, and
Yep, we're lucky right where we're at here. We got a little taste of everything. So
yeah, it's kind of nice, when here, because there's not too far away that we can get the stuff, and it makes it kind of nice where, I don't have a long ways to go. If I want to go, like out to Halsey or something, it's not that big of a drive, where it's not so unreasonable that you can't get there, because from here to Colorado is like what, 8 hour drive, 9 hour drive.
right.
And you're I'm within probably 4 hours of any place in Nebraska I wanted to go hunt.
Right.
So that's not too bad of a drive.
Yep, and having statewide tags where you can go and hunt and not have to worry about drawing a tag. I mean, it's getting tougher to draw these non-resident tags in every state. And so, just because you plan a hunt for one year don't necessarily mean it's going to pan out if you don't draw that tag. So,
Right. And that's like not archery. A lot of those archery tags are just over the counter. So uh,
yep,
you can get those anytime, and you don't have to worry about going for, it's like, okay, am I going to get a tag, or now I got a tag, and now I got to find, where can I go hunt, because I didn't line anything up, because I didn't know if I was going to get one, or you line everything all up, all ready to go, and don't get a tag.
that's right. So, but no, I usually have some hunts planned. Like I said, I've hunted 8 or 9 states, and I've hunted, I mean, elk and bears and deer and every kind of thing. I mean, I've even went out to Maryland and did some saltwater fishing for stingrays. And I have a buddy who lives out there. I've deer hunted out on Chesapeake Bay, and hunted antelope in Wyoming, and elk in Montana. And I mean, so I usually try to do an out of state hunt every couple years anyway. So
Yep. Makes it interesting. You get to see different part of the country and different animals, and
it is. And the different people you meet. I mean, it's always unique no matter where you go, the people that you deal with. So um, a lot of different things out there that are offered. So
well, and there's always, a friend somewhere. If you have a bow in your hand, and you see somebody with a bow in their hand, they're automatically your friend. You go up and start a conversation. It's like you'd never seen them before, but yeah, you go up and carry a conversation like your old friends.
that's exactly right. And even online, I've met some of my best friends on different online forums and stuff, and
Yeah.
ended up doing some great out of state hunts. And I brought some of them out. Like I said, my buddy from Colorado that I had out turkey hunting, that's how I met him. And my buddy, I've went on multiple hunts out in Montana. That's how I met him. So, and they're some of my closest friends. So it's like you say, it's one of those things that people have into common, and there's a lot of great people in our sport.
Well, and we have a long history of the sport. So, um, I did one of my podcasts. I did the history of archery, and come to find out it's like 64,000 years ago they found evidence of archery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Been around that long. It ain't going any soon. Any too soon. It's
No,
not going away. So
that's for sure. So yeah, they had it figured out, didn't they?
yeah. Well, bows have changed. When I first started in archery, my options were wood or fiberglass, longbow or recurve, and wood or wood arrows,
Yep.
flush with feathers.
Yes.
That was your
Yep.
option. In the
Yeah.
60s, there was no compound bows yet. Until 70s when a
Right.
compound came out.
Yeah.
And then you had aluminum arrows. Then you had your opposite of aluminum with your traditional bows, your recurves, long bows. You go aluminum. They were a little bit more durable, but not really much. Still with
Right.
feathers. And
Yeah.
then you go to the compounds, and then um, I shoot carbons now with my compound, but I still shoot feathers.
Yeah.
I just like feathers, and I just don't want to go away from them.
Yep. I
You
shoot
know,
vanes, but I got a lot of friends still shoot feathers, and
yeah.
they shoot and they kill as much stuff as anybody. So it's all a
Well,
preference thing.
when you look at it too, there's a little difference. The feathers are generally lighter than the vanes,
Yeah.
so you have a little bit lighter arrow. So initially your speed's a little faster, but feathers provide more drag. So downrange, the vanes keep their speed a little bit longer.
Right. Yep.
And I know PSE did a study one time on uh, how fast to spin the arrows. And they found in their study that the arrow goes along, and when the circular velocity exceeds the forward velocity, they, like a parachute, they just drop.
Right. The parachute effect, they call it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the more you try and spin them, the faster that happens.
Correct. So there's a
But
happy medium in there. You want spin, but you don't want too much.
yeah. Now, the new carbon arrows are so skinny, you can't get much of a helical on there. They're more like offset. I use a helical jig, but it's
Yeah.
pretty much just slightly offset, just enough
Yeah.
to spin it.
Yeah.
And that just is the way it goes. There's all kinds of things you can do. And the older bows, there was a lot we did to make them perform better, like putting overdraws on them. So now you draw back
Right.
and the arrows clear back past your wrist, almost
Yeah.
like to where your watch would be on there, just to
Oh,
try and get some speed out of it. And now it's like you don't have room for an overdraw because some of those brace heights are so short that you're lucky not smacking the back of the rest when it's sitting on there anyway.
that's right. And as fast as these new bows are, it's like no need for them. I remember the days of overdraw and some of the horror pictures from some of the disasters with them. But
Oh
I
yeah.
remember when the overdraws were coming on, and it was a fad, but kind of run its course.
Yeah. And they're not as safe too, because if the arrow falls off the rest, because it used to be just a 2-prong rest, and you'd set them on there, and or the little flipper styles, depending on which style of riser you had. But if that arrow come off and was sitting up against your hand and you didn't realize it and pulled the trigger, you're just shooting your arrow through your hand. And I
Yeah.
actually seen a guy on his hand on his left hand, because he holds both the left hand,
Yeah.
in between his index finger and his thumb there was a 3-sided scar. It fell off the rest. He didn't realize it until he pulled the trigger and sent the arrow through his hand.
uh,
That's why when I sized arrows, when I had my store, I sized an arrow, I sized it so that it was in front of your hand, so if it fell off, it might smack your hand, but you're not going to stick that point in there because it's not there. And I'd say,
yeah.
why you do this? Like, draw back and imagine it falls off and sitting on your hand. Now, what do you do? Because it's sharp enough, it's stuck onto your hand. You can't get it flipped off because it's stuck onto your hand. You can't draw back any further because you're already back all the way. Now, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like, you can't let down. It's going to
Right.
go through your hand. You're stuck. Hopefully
That's
somebody's
right.
around. So I says, that's
Yeah.
why I make them in front of your hand. So you don't have to worry about it because it's in front of your hand. Just let down.
It's a good practice for sure.
Yeah.
So
Kind of some of the things you learn when you're setting up bows. You think about, okay, safety and when you draw back, make sure that everything's got a good clearance. And
Yeah. Yeah. That's for, it's, back in those days, like I said, some of those pictures where you saw guys with broadheads stuck through went through their hand, not a pretty picture. So,
no, or your aluminum arrows breaking,
yeah.
that, and that's why you need to check your arrows all the time. If they get bent, not only if you're like in a 3D tournament or shooting at in an animal, you're going to miss by quite a bit, depending how far you're away. I had arrows bent slightly, and I'm throwing what should be 10s on the 3D animals down to 5s and 8s. It's like, why is this one always off? So I started spinning. I was like, sure enough, that one's bent. So put it in the spot on my quiver. I'm not going to use it. And
It
go to
doesn't
the
take
next
it.
ones. And
Yeah.
now at the carbons, if you shoot thousands of arrows, you might have a problem with them. But generally, a carbon arrow is broke or straight.
That's right. Those days of trying to straighten aluminum stuff, like you say, it didn't take much to bend them. Now it's like usually if you do what would have been an aluminum, it's going to probably either break your carbon or it's going to remain straight. So
Yeah, you can't. I've actually got 2 jigs for straightening aluminum arrows. I never was able to get one to straighten that was better than it was when it was bent.
no.
It was spun and it said it was straight. It just wouldn't fly like it was any better. So
Yeah.
I didn't bother with them.
I had one of those too, and that you could mess with an arrow forever, it seemed like it. And sometimes I had them looking more like an S when I was done than before. So.
Well, and then when you think about it, how would if you took a piece of aluminum, a little aluminum bar that wasn't super thick where you could bend it, how would you break it without using tools? Keep flexing it, right? So you're bending it, bending it back. If you've ever seen, I don't know if the listeners, anybody watching, is ever seen a slow motion of an arrow being shot out of a bow. And that thing is just flexing back and forth. It looks like a snake. Looks like a snake going through the air for a little while. And that's to do with aluminum. When you shoot, it flexes because you've got that weight in the front, which there's more weight in the front base versus the back. So now it moves the knock and the point does not move. So now you're bending it. And then all of a sudden the point starts moving, and then it just keeps oscillating for a while and straightens out. And that's why you can't shoot wood arrows out of a compound. Just the force it develops so quick, it'll just snap them.
Yeah.
And I actually on one of the forums one time, some guy actually said, yeah, you can. Not while I'm standing around, you're not gonna, if you're shooting a wooden arrow. Now, if you take one of the real original ones that was so slow and not really developing, the round wheeled ones, you possibly could on those. But you take any modern bow that has any kind of a let off or a little camming action, even the white-tailed 2s, I wouldn't shoot them out of there because those were an offset a little bit. So it wasn't like a big reticle cam, but it did develop a little more force. It had let off. So you have that let off, and all of a sudden it snaps it in higher weight. Yeah, how does martial artists break boards with their hands? Instant snap going through it, and that's what a compound does to the arrow. And that's why it's so important to have correct spine.
It is, for sure.
You're better off to have overspined than underspined arrows.
Yep.
I know I had one of the compounds I was shooting 25 12s, the XX78, so they're 1,500 straightness. So straight you get aluminum. You get carbons now, which is 1,000s. And that you look on the spine charts, it was way over spine. But you know what? It shot perfectly out of that bow. Back then was shooting through paper and it perfect tear every time you shot it.
Right.
Paper tears now, it really doesn't tell you a lot because you can take a perfectly tuned bow and make a bad tear just by gripping it wrong.
Just a little hand torque's all it takes.
Get that death grip on there, you're never going to get a good tear.
No. And that's what a lot of people struggle with. They think it's the bow, and it's a lot of times it's just hand torque. Because it
Right.
doesn't take much with these new bows. It's like a little firm grip, or it can throw that off.
Well, and two, the faster the bow, the more it magnifies your mistakes. A slow bow is pretty forgiving. Even the old ones, they're fairly forgiving.
Right.
You could have a death grip on them, you could have a loose grip on them. They really didn't shoot much different. But now you take these new ones, and if your form's not perfect, it's going to show.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so many people just don't know a better way to shoot. I didn't want to say they're shooting wrong, but yeah, you're shooting wrong. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of times I'll talk to somebody that's an archer for a while, and it's like, say use a wrist strap. Yeah, I can give you your first lesson for free. Quit pulling the trigger. Like, huh? Yeah, you're pulling the trigger, aren't you? Yeah. Well, stop doing it. How do I know? Because most people that haven't been taught proper way to use a release,
Right.
and then you even get the people that have their finger way up by their eye and get ready to shoot, and then
And then
finger
they
just comes
punch
down
it.
and just slams that trigger.
Oh
You're
yeah,
like,
you don't have to tell me. I went through a stage of target panic, and that's when I was just shooting instinctively a compound, and just shot bare bow, and then all of a sudden I was like, when people used to talk about target panic, I'm like, how can you get target panic? All you do is see something and shoot. And then I got it, and then I went to sights and a release, and I was one of those old creep up on it and slam away, and it's like, but I still
you don't
shoot
do
it
that anymore.
reasonably. No, 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 no. Well, I'd like to say never, but there's times where all of a sudden a panic or something, but no. But I do a lot more shooting now too. So, but that target panic it's not an easy thing to always get over, but it's still, it's sometimes a work in progress with me.
Yeah, well, and two, by pulling the trigger, that leads you to have target panic. Not
Absolutely.
saying that you can eliminate it by shooting a better technique, but yeah, you can eliminate by shooting a better technique.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, what happens, when you think about what is going on in your mind, in your eyes, in your hand, in your body, if you're pulling the trigger, uh, you see the pin move over the target. Now, if you're looking at the target, not the pin. If you're looking at the pin, you never miss your target because you're focused on the pin, not your target. So who cares where it hits? Because you don't
Right.
care about it. You're not
Yeah.
focused on it. So you focus on the target. You see the pin move across your target, and your eyes see that. Your mind says, pull the trigger. I'm on the target. Guess
Yeah.
what? You're moving off the target. And then your mind says, oh, stop, don't shoot. You've already started that pull. Whoop, there's your target panic. And now next thing you know, you keep doing it again, and then it gets worse.
It
Whereas
does
you
get
take,
worse. It's
move that trigger
to
back
the second
to the
joint
tip.
and pull through it. Yeah.
Now, firearm, I'm going to teach you to do off the tip of your finger.
Right.
I shot on a rifle team up through high school. So, I got pretty good at that stuff. But you want your finger, the trigger, the second joint, like you said, on the trigger. Now, you focus on the target, you put your pin over it, you start pulling and just focus on your target, focus on target.
Yeah.
And if you don't know when it's going to go off, you can't have target panic.
Yeah.
As soon as you start using that fine motor skill,
I know.
what I can tell people, it's like, okay, focus on the spot, real small one, like a head of a pin. It's like, if you focus on that and you lose focus, it's going to blow up and you're going to be with it. So you do not break focus on that spot. And now make your finger move without thinking about it. They can't do it.
Yeah.
Because when you think about moving the finger, what'd you stop doing? You stopped aiming. Because you stopped aiming, where's the arrow going to go? Don't know, because you're not aiming anymore.
That's right.
So that's a little bit of my lesson on how to correctly use a wrist strap.
It is. I have shot a wrist strap for a long time, and then when I'd get a little punchy with it, I would go to a hinge or maybe even a back tension release, just to start going through those mechanics and making
Right.
yourself aim and work through it. And then you go back to that, and then it was easier, just like you say, put it on that second, and just use the same form as you would like with a hand. So,
Well, and I have a Scott release with my wrist strap. And that's our part too, is you see a lot of people will put it, you've got your wrist right here, name up on your hand, the strap's on the hand and pulling. Now, if it's back past your wrist where you'd put your watch and you pull, that's completely different. So I was thinking, okay, put your hands over your hand and now pull them apart. What do you feel? You feel your wrist separating. And now put it up on here, lock it in it. Now you got a lot more force going through it and you're not messing with your hand. Here, you can't move your hand. Back here on the wrist, you can move your hand. That is what a wrist strap. It's not a hand strap.
right.
So
Good.
go through a lot of that in there. It's
Good
like,
tip.
and you have more force in pulling it back because you're not trying to separate here. As well as too, when you do that, take on your hand and pull. You feel it in the elbow. Move up on your wrist and pull. You don't feel it in the elbow. I've had my right elbow so sore when I was doing martial arts, smack it on the ground when you're doing falls and stuff, where I couldn't hardly move it, but yet I could draw my bow with my right hand because I had that wrist strap on there. I'm not using the elbow to pull. The strength isn't in the elbow, it's in the back. And it's just, I like teaching.
Well, that's good. Some great tips there. So
yeah, and I've taught a lot of people how to shoot, from when I had my story, I had one guy come in, he had a PhD, wasn't a medical doctor, but he had a PhD in whatever it was in. And normally I would go, back then the Nova bow was the low end beginner bow. And I set it up with arrows and release. You had to do nothing except buy a case. Everything was included. And he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to buy, he wanted a higher end bow. So, he's, instead of shelling out $350, he's shelling out, like $800-900. Of course, you got to remember this was 20 years ago.
yeah.
Now that same bow is probably more than that just for the bow without the accessories. And then with all my bows, I taught you how to shoot. I've been an archery instructor since '95. So I taught you how to shoot. That it included with all my bows. That's why I can get people to return their bows from Walmart and those places because they save $50. Because to start with, I'm going to charge you $40 at that time. It's $40 to set it up. And I'm going to charge you $100 an hour for instruction.
Right.
Yeah, that was my rate, $100 an hour for archery instructor. Now, generally you got maybe about 20 minutes, because I'm going to teach something you're going to practice. So I'm not going to stand there for an hour. But if I did, $100. Now it's going to be higher than that. But and this guy, 2 weeks after he bought a bow, first time shooting his bow, he never had a bow before, wanted to get an archery. 2 weeks later, he has a Robin Hood already.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I like doing. It's like, because I get to sell 2 more arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a different philosophy on selling arrows too when I have my store, because some of them would only sell in groups of half, 6 or 3 or something. I'd sell you 1. If you wanted 1 arrow, I'd sell you 1 arrow because I charged you, I think it's an extra $1. Take the 12 arrows, say there's, $12, 12 arrows, whatever it was, probably $3 an arrow. If you want to buy 1, it's not just 1/12 of the price, it's 1/12 plus $1.
Right.
So if you wanted to buy 1, I made 12 extra bucks on that dozen if you buy them 1 at a time. And I didn't care, you'd break them up. If somebody wanted 3 arrows, like, okay, make up 3 arrows. And I never had any pre-made arrows. I only bought shafts.
Fletched them all up and did them all yourself.
So do you want your comp pros 1,000s? Do you want your 3,000s? Do you want your 6,000s? What do you want for the grade of arrow? And then, when you go to the box stores, what are they? They're orange and yellow or a green and yellow. You got about 3 different basic colors. Well, no, because I had all kinds of different colors. Do you want 3-inch? You want 4-inch veins? Do you want 4 or 5-inch feathers? And, because I did a lot of traditional archery as well out there. So I had the 5-inch feathers just for them.
Right.
Most of us use 4-inch on the other bows. And now what's your favorite colors? Pick 2 of your favorite colors. You want 2 of this one or 1 of this one? And then what color knock do you want? Back in the aluminums, you glued on different color knocks. Now, at the carbons, you got about 1 choice. sometimes you had two choices, but generally they come with a knock. With aluminums, just come raw shafts.
Right.
So what do you want to do?
Yeah.
It's custom to you. If you're chartreuse and yellow, that's the colors you want. If you want orange and red, go for it. Purple
Yeah.
and pink. If you want the best color to see in the forest and your arrows is pink.
Yeah.
Nothing in the forest is pink.
That's
You,
right.
you got you got your browns and your greens. You got your leaves, which are your oranges and everything else, but nothing is pink. So a lot of guys, some of the guys that come in, it's like they want pink because
Yeah,
they
that's
can
what
see their
one of
arrows.
my good buddy, that's all he shoots is pink. So
Yeah, so you can find it.
yeah.
And then they have the wraps you can put on them too. And I had some fluorescent wraps, reflective, like you put on the street stuff, that type of reflectivity. And
Yeah.
that's a hard word to say. After you've been talking for a while. But yeah, one of those LED lights just were great at finding those. I had one
Yeah,
arrow that
find
was
them at
buried under an evergreen tree. I'm shining my light. Oh, there it is. And I was probably 15, 20 feet away from it. Picked it up. There it is. Went over and grabbed it.
yeah.
Yeah. My hunting arrows have those wraps on them just for that reason.
Well, that's a smart thing. And it saves the guy some money.
Yeah. Well, I have enough shafts now. I'll never go through them all, but if I was having to buy shafts, oh man, that would hurt. I
Yes.
don't know what dozen arrows go for now, but when you start getting into the Comp Pro ones, they were, fairly expensive then.
Yeah. I mean, now just getting shafts on some of them, I mean, up in the 150 plus range. I mean, just for the shafts. So
Yeah. I remember when I was getting aluminums, they were about $70 for a dozen of the XX78 2512s. And I'd buy a new set every year.
yeah.
I'd set them up, get them fletched, put my broadheads on them, shoot them, make sure we're all shooting the same, and go hunt.
Yeah.
I only hunted with brand new shafts
Yeah.
because I
So
figure I want the straightest shaft I can get because that makes my groups tighter, which we've talked about several times on here that, the straightness of your shaft is going to determine the size of your group. You're not going to get those stacking arrows with the, lower grade arrows. You're just not going to
right.
stack them.
No,
They just won't.
no. That's exactly right. I mean, sometimes it's worth the extra money, especially for longer range shooting. So
Right. If you take, your straight shafts, like your Comp Pros, and you put 3 arrows touching side by side, so that's, what, maybe a ½ inch diameter, and you take a 3,000ths, now you open that up and you put your 5,000ths or 6,000ths. Now you're lucky to keep them in the 5 ring. Forget about keeping them in the X ring. And
right.
now then down you go out to 50 yards. And how big is your group? Go out to 100 yards. You're not
Yeah.
with the lower ones, you're not even on target.
No, no. Makes a big difference.
Yeah. And then outdoors too, start shooting those long range ones, just like the rifle hunters do. They have to worry about the wind currents, and then, just the environment between here and there. Same thing with a bow. It's just not, it might be 100 yards instead of 1,000 yards, but we still have the same thing to consider when you're going out there shooting those longer ranges. What's the wind doing at the target? It might be calm where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of
No,
long range, what's the longest you've killed an animal with your bow at?
let's see. I would say probably about 70 yards on antelope. Do a lot of spot and stock antelope hunting in the sand hills. That's one of my favorite things to hunt. And getting 20, 30, 40 yards in the sand hills on one spot stock is not easy. So sometimes, common range is going to be in that 40 to 60 yard range. And not that I can't shoot further than 70 yards, but it's like I try to limit it, to that. I have made a couple follow-up shots at longer distances than that, but shots I wouldn't have normally took, but on a follow-up, maybe more apt to take that longer range if you know it was the only one you were going to get. So once you'd already hit it. So
Yeah, I always thought, if I got an arrow through it already, there's high likelihood that I've killed it, or worse yet, I've wounded it. So if it goes out a little bit further and stops, I'm going to take another arrow at it.
yeah,
What's the worst I can do is make a bad hit. I've already hit it once. So
yeah,
a second hit isn't gonna hurt anything. I might chase it off, might run off, or it might have just laid down there and died. Which I had that happen one time. Was I'd shot it, it's like, I don't know, 10 feet away, and it come out and stood broadside to me about 30 yards out, and where it was at, tree was in the way, so I'm using my safety belt to help hold me in the tree, in the tree stand. So I'm leaning out, and then I get another good shot on it, and so now I got two good shots on it, and
yeah,
it didn't go very far. It just kind of hit bushes. We did find it, but it took a while.
yeah, yeah.
They went and hid in the bushes.
But no, I like to practice long range a lot. I mean, even if you're not going to shoot at an animal out that far, it does, like you say, it helps to see what you're doing as far as your form, and that it's gonna really show up more when you're shooting out there 70, 80, 90 yards at a target
Right.
compared to 20, 30 yards. And then you shoot 70, 80 yards at 3Ds, and then you move into 30 or 40, and it seems like a chip shot. So,
Right.
so I do a ton of shooting. Like I said earlier, I love shooting 3Ds, and I try to shoot a 300 or two every year too. But so you know, the more you shoot, the better you get. More familiar with your equipment, the better you get. So
Well, when you know your equipment, and it just makes it so much easier because you don't have to try and figure it out. And whatever you're carrying, whether it be longbow, recurve, compound, crossbow, you just need to get familiar with your equipment, so what's that worst thing you want to do is go out there and it's like, okay, how does this work?
that's right. And know your limitations. I mean, we have that responsibility to the animals we're hunting, that we aren't just out there flinging arrows, and usually when I release an arrow, I have full expectation that it's going to connect, but doesn't always happen. But you know, um, usually not going to take unethical shots.
And that's just all part of practicing, knowing your equipment, and knowing where you're at, and just realizing if you're off by 5 yards on your estimate of your yardage, that can make a big difference if they're out very far.
Absolutely. So when I'm spotting and stalking out in the hills, I never shoot until I have my till I know a range. Um, just it seems like before rangefinders, I was a lot better at estimating yardages than I am now, and kind of become dependent on them rangefinders. But it's a great tool, and it makes for a more ethical shot a lot of times.
Well, yeah, when you're out hunting, it's nice to, so okay, this is what the yardage is. Yeah, okay, verify that you're at. Now, if you go into a 3D shoot, we talked about this in the last podcast. You go out there, you range it, you shoot, you estimate it yourself. Don't
Yes.
use electronics, and you make your shot. If you hit where you wanted, don't do nothing. If you missed, get the rangefinder. So, okay, it says it's here. I thought it was here. I shot it for here, and I hit here. I executed a good shot. Or it's like, no, I completely blew the shot.
Right.
Okay, I was on. I just messed up the shot.
Yeah.
Which I've done many times.
Oh yeah.
You mess up the shot, and that way you're not depending on the rangefinder, but you're there to help verify that what you thought it was correct. And that, as far as I'm concerned, that's the correct way to use a rangefinder. When you're out there practicing, range it, shoot it, verify if you missed
Yeah.
it. If you didn't get
Yeah.
off, it's like, what was I? Oh, I thought it was 35. It was actually 32,
Yeah.
and I didn't hit where I wanted because That's why you practice the shooting the spots, because now I know I can hit the spot. And that's why I like going to 3Ds, because now I know I can judge the yardage.
Yeah.
And what messes, we get lots of what messes a lot of people up is the angles.
Oh yeah.
Now, talk to a carpenter. They're going to know what a 3, 4, 5 triangle is. And if you know, then great, you know where I'm going. If you don't, what that is you got two sides of your triangle. One's 3, one's 4. And those are right angles. The distance between the 2 points is 5. So I like to use that example. Once you understand that, now I'm on a hill, I'm on a tree, in a tree stand up. So now if you take straight down over, I'm 40 yards above the target. Well, if the target straight line over is 30 yards over, what do you shoot it for? But when you look at it straight, it says it's 50 yards.
Yeah.
Straight down there is 50 yards. What do you shoot it for? Be able to say 50. No. You just shot over it by 20 yards. You completely shot over its back.
Yep.
Because and how you can explain how this works is gravity only works in the horizontal position. How far did it travel horizontal, not diagonally? The vertical part doesn't matter. And once you get there, that's why when you're shooting uphill, you gotta shoot lower. You're shooting down, you gotta shoot lower. It's like, well, why? Well, that's just what you gotta do. Why?
Yeah.
And then once you understand that, now it makes it a whole lot easier. Like what I would do is I would range where I'm at straight across, horizontal over to a tree you can see where the trail is. It comes to follow a tree. I'm going to judge yardage to that tree. I don't care where the trail is. I'm judging to the tree. And then I had one that's like 20-yard shot. All the that tree is 20 yards away. The trail looked like it was probably 40.
Yeah.
Because the deer was just little. That's like, I know this is a 20-yard shot, 20-yard pin, dead deer.
Yeah.
Because I knew that, and I took that into account. That was way before rangefinders. I just got my rangefinder last year.
Well, even with these angle compensated rangefinders, my buddy just got back from New Zealand on a tar hunt, and I think he had one that he missed, which was like showing a 25 or 24-yard cut. So, I mean, he was basically shooting straight down at this cliff, and he still shot over it. Well, what do they say? Even on some of those, once you go past 40 some degrees, some of those the angle compensation aren't even that accurate. So there's some of them guys that hunt sheep and stuff that they carry their diagram and they have a chart on there and go off the chart rather than to use the angle compensated, because it's, like he said, it was showing that, well, he had a great squeeze on him and shot 6 inches over its back. Well, it just wasn't. Kind of also depends on what angle you're holding that rangefinder to your eye and all that. So
yeah, I haven't tried mine. I've got a Vortex that I got actually last year's first I used. I think I got it a year before, but I know if you know what your bow does at the close range, and I think we've talked about this the last podcast. We kind of get into the technique of shooting, which is good for somebody that's listening that's just new. All this stuff about how to shoot is kind of tricky, and when you think about it, shooting real close, like you're 5 feet, 10 feet, 7 feet, those really close ones. And people say, well, I'll just shoot sight down the arrow. You ever done that? No. Well, that ain't gonna do any good. But when you think about it, think about when you're at full draw, the arrow's at your mouth. That's where it's at. Where's your sights? Where's your eyes? Up about 3 inches. So now you're starting off, you're 3 inches low to start with. And I know a couple of videos I did on shooting technique. I was doing it in my basement. From I was probably about 7 feet. So I've got just a regular bag, but I don't want to put the pin where I want it to go, because I know below it is bricks. from the ledge that's in my basement. So I was like, okay, I'm looking here. Okay, where is my bottom pin? Because that's where I need to make sure I'm going. It's like, okay, where do I need to aim? I
Right.
know I got to go high because I'm at such short distance. If I aim for that lower spot, I'm going to miss and hit my arrow in the brick, and I'm only 5 feet away from it, or 7 feet, and that arrow's going to come back at me.
Right.
And my wife was down there videoing as well at the time because I can't video myself showing different techniques, and so I'd make sure I'm shooting up higher. And where the ledge was, it was actually a little bit high, so I had to kind of almost aim up a little bit. So that means I got to lean at my waist to get it up where it's going to be. So that makes my form look a little weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the other thing too, is your form is your arms straight out. That's your form. Draw back horizontal. Now bend at the waist up or down to get to your target, because that's your form.
That's
And
exactly right. And a lot of people don't do that on them extreme angles, and it'll throw you off. So
yeah, I did that one on a raised platform at a gator that was like 5 feet away. And at that time, I had a chart that you could work really good. I'm not sure the program is anymore. I'm not sure if we work on a new machines anyway, but it wanted to know the speed of the arrow, the weight of the arrow. I'm not even sure the draw, but I want to know the distance between your peep and the pins, and how far it was from your eyes to the arrow. And it figured all that out and figured out your chart. And I was able to sight in my 20-yard pin, stick the chart underneath it, and line up all the rest of them, clear out to 60 yards. About 60 yards shooting is right on. And I looked at it, it's like, okay, and I had that on my bow. It's like, where do I have to shoot at 5 feet? I got to shoot for 70 yards.
yeah.
And sure enough, I'm going there when the 70-yard got on there. It's like, boom, nailed it right in the middle. And it's amazing how many people couldn't even hit it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was the same thing in bow fishing too, because you're shooting at such close range.
Yep. I mean, a lot of your shots there, 5 to 10 yards. And I used my old Bear Bruin that I shot bear bow for years. So it's like I just was kind of a gap shooter basically. So I kind of looked right down the arrow, and so lucky I can still pick that thing up and shoot it pretty well. So
Well, and I don't really gap shoot with my bow fishing setup. It's a recurve,
yeah,
and because I don't have time with a compound, it's a different weapon for me. I pick up a
yeah,
compound, it's a completely different weapon. My mindset's different. Everything is different. The way I do everything is completely different than a recurve.
yeah.
And so I use that for bow fishing because I can look at the target, draw back, get my anchor point,
And
release
that's where
through.
it's going. Yeah,
And I don't have time. If I had a compound, my mindset changes. It's just
yeah,
like for those that do guns, you don't shoot a handgun like you do a revolver, like a shotgun, like a rifle. They're all different weapons. My
right.
recurve is not the same weapon as my compound. So my mindset changes. No matter which weapon I have, it changes. Depending on what I'm doing, and that I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just
Yeah,
my whole way my old mind worked, because I started out with the recurve and then got another one differently, and you start using pins, and so I've tried using a compound instinctively, and it just doesn't work for me.
yeah. Well, that's what I started out with, was just shooting instinctively with and that old Bear Bruin. Of course, that was a long axle to axle, so it was a
Right.
pretty forgiving bow, and still have that thing and still use it a ton. So, but I bought a Colorado Bighorn and shot recurve for a few years. Never did shoot an animal with it though. I was always going to, and then I'd always chicken out. And but I sure enjoyed shooting it when I did. So
Well, and they take a lot more practice. Recurve longbows take a
for
lot more
sure.
practice to do compounds, and compounds take more practice than crossbows.
Yep.
So it just and crossbows take more practice than a rifle. So it just
Yep.
depends on what the weapon is. And I've got one rifle, we've been using the same ammo for years, and it's as long as we use that ammo, I go out and take a shot dead on. Next year, take a shot dead on, and it's like, okay, it hasn't changed in decades, so I don't even need to take a shot with that one. Now, if I ever change bullets,
Yep.
manufacturers or anything, now I gotta go through the whole mess again. But
Yeah, I'm the same way. I used to do a ton of coyote calling, and so I still get the rifle out for that. But like you say, that thing I can pick up and have the same loads I've always had, can drive tacks with it. So
yeah, that's kind of a fun thing when you reload yourself. I've been reloading since '76, so I've been doing it for quite a while, and
yeah,
it's nice working up a load with a rifle. We can put 3 shots in the same hole.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I did kind of some similar thing, with my when I had aluminums. I took and I fletched the arrows, put the nock in, because there's a unibushing, so you put the unibushing in, put the nock in,
Right.
and then I weighed the arrow and I wrote on it how much it weighed. And then I weighed my tips, 100 grain tips. And then I weighed them and matched them up so they'd be close again to all one. And I'm taking a filing a little back off the insert, get the weight. So I had a full dozen aluminum arrows within half a grain. The min and the max was less than half a grain apart from each other.
Geez, that's
I did
saying
it
something
once,
there.
never do it again. Well, the thing was, the weight in the back and front may not be exactly the same, because one might be 102 grain tip, one might be a 98 grain tip. When you
Right,
buy a bag of 100, they're going to vary. They're 100 grains plus or minus a percentage.
right.
So I would weigh the shaft, because those are going to look a little different, because you got feathers and you got glue, and each of the shafts a little different. My thought was at that time was, if the arrows all weigh the exact same weight, they're going to go the exact same speed. They're going to have the same drop.
Yep.
At bow hunting range, it doesn't make a bit of difference.
No.
Now, if I was going to be shooting 150-yard shots, yeah,
Yeah.
I think 60 is the longest I've really shot in any. They had an outdoor field round with shooting, what was it, the 20, 30, and 40-yard shots I shot one time. But I just don't shoot those longer ranges. And now, as I get older, like I've said on many podcasts, I don't see well enough to take those long shots anymore. So my range is 20 to 30 is where I try to make sure all of my shots going to be within that.
Yep.
Well, we've been, yeah, it's been going about an hour and a half here, looks like. So I know
Jeez.
these kind of get going, I like to keep them in an hour, but it never works out.
Yeah,
We get
well,
talking and
I got the gift of gab myself, so when I get going, it
yeah,
goes by quick.
yes. So that's always a fun time to get talking and getting to know each other. And that, that's kind of one of the biggest things I like doing is, connecting the archery world together, and talking about the sport and what can we do to help each other out. And when, if you have a business, then you can use part of the podcast to promote your business. And that's all it is, just promote the sport of archery however we can do it. And like your event that you have there, we'll say we can get some people in there, and we'll get some posts going, and try and promote whatever we can in archery.
Heck yes, that's what it's all about.
So what do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to tell the listeners and watchers?
Um, like I said, I got exposed to archery when I was just a little toddler, and then, slowly grew into it into my teens. And now my life, revolves around it. Like I said, I have something planned almost every month. But I think the biggest message out there is to enjoy your time in the field, be respectful to the game that we are pursuing, and utilize it. That's the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest message we can send. I got non-hunters for friends, and you wouldn't believe how many of them love to come eat venison when I cook it, and they actually ask about my hunting. It's like it's opened their eyes and changed their thoughts on bow hunting. So
Yeah.
anytime that we can share our stories in a favorable manner to those type of people, it also helps grow our sport, because it's like, when we look at opportunities and that, you look at some of these states like Colorado that have had, different seasons go to voters and they've lost seasons. It's like the more we can educate people to what we're doing, it's conservation, it's utilizing a resource and do it in a positive manner. That's huge for our sport as well.
Yeah, good closing thoughts.
But no, I appreciate the opportunity, Roy. I truly do. And like I said, down the road, I get that brown bear from Alaska. I'd love to come back on and tell that story.
Yeah, just schedule it. When you do that, just pull up the link and schedule my calendar and let's go.
You bet. Well, I've enjoyed the chat, and like I said, I'm thankful for the opportunity. So those out there that get a chance to look at the Nebraska Bowhunters Association, we have a lot to offer there, and I think you guys will enjoy it.
Yeah, Nebraska has a lot to offer.
For sure.
Kind of that hidden secret. Maybe we don't want to tell them about it.
Well, I know that's
Keep it to
right.
ourselves.
We are lucky to live where we live. That's for sure.
You're right. Well, thanks for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun talking with you, and I know our listeners, they'll enjoy it too, because if they're like me, they like to hear all these stories, and it's a lot of fun.
You bet. Well, hopefully down the road have another opportunity, but thank you a bunch. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, my name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101, and we'll see you on the next one.